So, doctor, tell us what are the signs of heart disease that often get missed? What should we be looking for?
That shortness of breath, I think, is a real key feature, as well as sometimes lightheadedness or dizziness. Think about chest pain, but often abdominal pain or indigestion can often go missed as that's actually, especially in someone who has diabetes, where their nerve endings might not be typical, we would say. Those
Yes.
patients with pain in the abdomen and nausea, and that actually is a sign of a heart attack.
Hey everyone, this is Jonathan Marks with Go to Health. Welcome back to another show. We're growing 10,000 downloads per day. We're so happy that we're meeting your needs for better and evidence-based health information. You can watch us on our website at gotohealthmedia.com. You can subscribe to us there. You can also subscribe to us and watch on YouTube and 8 podcast networks, including Apple and Spotify. So on to today's show. In the U.S., someone dies from heart disease every 33 seconds. Men face a higher risk, yet many are reluctant to see a doctor for regular screenings and put off appointments until something is wrong. Nearly half of men in the U.S. have at least one major risk factor, including high blood pressure, high cholesterol, extra weight, or smoking. Let's talk about why men are more vulnerable to heart disease, what symptoms to watch for, and how to talk to your dad or the man in your life about important screenings and checkups for this Father's Day. Our guest today is Dr. Jane Wilcox. She's the Associate Chief of Cardiology at Northwestern Medicine. She has both clinical expertise and personal experience with this issue. She cared for her father through the years of heart failure, which influenced her career in medicine. She's now focused on helping other families recognize warning signs and take early action to protect the people they love. If you want to learn more, you can visit nm.org/heart. That's Northwestern Medicine, nm.org/heart. So welcome to the show, Dr. Jane Wilcox. How are you today?
I'm well. I'm well. Good to be with you, Jonathan. How are you?
Good, I'm great. So tell me, why are men more likely to develop heart disease?
So, men and women are at risk for heart disease, just to be clear. The heart disease is still the number one killer of both men and women, both here in the US and globally. However, men don't have the benefit of hormone protection. So, estrogen can be protective for atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, specifically like that hardening of the arteries.
Mm-hmm.
And, while men, I guess they don't have that benefit, they also don't get hot flashes and all
Right,
the
so
things
there's
that come with
trade-offs.
menopause. Right. There are trade-offs, but, move the diagnosis time or move the disease up, 5 to 10 years as compared to women who still
Wow.
are at risk for cardiovascular disease, but may present a little bit later. There are some other reasons that men are at high risk, particularly for cardiovascular disease. Men tend to carry weight in their bellies, in their abdomen, and that type of fat is called visceral fat. It is particularly damaging. It causes inflammation. It can secrete bad hormones, and that can worsen risk factors for cardiovascular disease.
So the fat itself can do all this?
It can, yeah. There's good fat and bad fat. There's brown fat and white fat. And that visceral fat around the organs is particularly dangerous.
And tell us a little bit more about why it's dangerous.
So it can secrete inflammatory markers.
Mm-hmm.
You've heard of cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone that comes from that type of fat as well.
Interesting.
And then the fat itself actually can surround the heart. There's new data that that type of fat can cause what we call pericardial constraint. It almost can restrict the heart from relaxing, and it can also secrete hormones directly to the heart circulation, and that can worsen heart failure.
Tell
Now,
us a little bit
yeah.
more about inflammation and how that's dangerous for heart health.
So inflammation in general is not good for our health in general, but inflammation and cardiovascular disease is particularly deleterious or dangerous. Diabetes is actually an inflammatory condition as well. And when you have concomitant diabetes, that puts you at risk for cardiovascular disease, specifically that atherosclerotic disease, the hardening of the arteries, and then is heart failure, where the heart muscle itself doesn't pump or relax well. And inflammation can also, we sometimes call it harvesting. We've heard like around the time of the Super Bowl, there's a lot more heart attacks at this sort of high risk or high stress times. And so stress itself can cause inflammation, and that can lead to ruptured plaque, leading to a heart attack.
Wait, so what is this?
Lots
What
of
you said around the Super Bowl. How is the Super Bowl connected? I'm really interested in this.
Yeah. So the Monday morning after the Super Bowl, a lot of times you see a spike in people presenting to the emergency room with heart attacks.
Wow.
And yeah, because they get all excited about the game, right? And
Oh my
then
gosh.
the stress hormones are high, and that can not necessarily cause a heart attack. But if you were going to have a heart attack on Thursday or Friday, you had that heart attack earlier because of that high stress situation.
Interesting. So, doctor, tell us, what are the signs of heart disease that often get missed? What should we be looking for?
So there's the classic elephant on my chest, pain down my left arm, pain up my left jaw that we're trained to watch out for as a heart attack. But there are often subtle signs prior to that, or that might have a different cardiovascular condition, and those signs can often go missed. So things like shortness of breath. Now, I mean, I get short of breath if you ask me to sprint 2 blocks, right? But
Mm-hmm.
difference is that as we get older, we can get more sedentary. And so that's why it's important to stay active. But if you're not that active and you're now short of breath when you get up from the couch to the refrigerator, there's probably a lot more things going on at that point. So that shortness of breath, I think, is a real key feature, as well as sometimes lightheadedness or dizziness. Think about chest pain, but often abdominal pain or indigestion can often go missed, as that's actually, especially in someone who has diabetes, where their nerve endings might not be typical, we would say. Those
Yes.
patients with pain in the abdomen and nausea, and that actually is a sign of a heart attack.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'm glad you
Yeah.
mentioned that.
Yeah. It can be a little scary having all these sort of vague symptoms. But and also anytime a symptom gets worse with activity and better with rest, that makes us worried about a blood vessel problem where the organ is not getting enough blood flow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about your background. I understand your father had heart disease and heart trouble. How did that affect your work today, and what did you learn from that experience?
It's a long story. I'll make it shorter, but he was diagnosed when I was a sophomore in college. He was 55, and he went from having risk factors, he was a little overweight, had diabetes, but working sort of a regular dad, right?
Yes.
Went to being acutely hospitalized for heart failure.
Mm-hmm.
And was actually listed for heart transplant for a short period of time. And that really took the wind out of my sails. I was in college at the time and knew that I loved the health sciences and wanted to be a physician. But at that time, I really focused on cardiology and specifically heart failure.
Mm.
And over the next decade or so, he got actually a lot better with the new therapies that became available for heart failure, which were mostly medical therapies, actually.
Mm.
I continued my training, and now I actually direct the heart failure program here at Northwestern. And we call it the Heart Failure Treatment and Recovery Program because our goal is to improve heart muscle function. And when we can improve heart muscle function, it's great. And when we cannot, then we offer things like heart transplantation or ventricular assist devices, which are heart pumps. So it's been quite the journey.
Got it. Amazing. Why are men, or do you have insight into the difficulty that men have in either getting a regular checkup or seeing a doctor or noticing or admitting they're in pain? What do you understand about that?
Well, I think from my own perspective, often the men, I just talked about my father, has a stoic personality, often kind of waiting to, the phrase power through or press on, was something that
Yeah.
was said in in my household, and I'm sure it's said in other households as well. But at the same time, fathers will talk to their kids and their loved ones about, got to make sure that the tires are filled up and the oil's checked in the car. You have to be safe when you take a trip or get your house inspected to make sure you're safe. We really need to treat our bodies the same way, right? Mm. So going in for that preventive health check, knowing our numbers is really important. And that's something that I think I try to talk to the men and the women in my life, but particularly the fathers who may not put that as a high priority.
What's the best way to talk to a dad or a man or your loved one about regular screenings and checkups and why they're so important? How do we get them into that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it starts with what motivates the man in your life, the father or father figure or spouse, like what motivates them. And usually good quality of life, spending time with their kids, their grandkids. And so starting with that motivation and then starting with, okay, well, there are some things that you can do that are within your control to really move the needle on heart disease and prevent you from suffering from a heart attack or a stroke. I also think a lot of the men don't want to be burdens on their family, right? And so it's like, hey, get in there and get your heart health checked out so that you can live a meaningful life. And knowing those numbers are really important. So blood pressure in particular, like, hey, dad, what's your blood pressure? We should be targeting 120 over 80. If it's higher than that, then we should understand why. And then the cholesterol is another piece that we know is linked to atherosclerosis and heart attack and stroke. So having dads and father figures knowing what their numbers are and empowering them, I think, to ask those questions is really important.
Great. And how often should we get a checkup?
So an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, as they say, right? So really should be getting a checkup yearly with your primary care physician. And most primary care physicians are very well versed to have these initial conversations about blood pressure and cholesterol and diabetes and modifying your risk factors for heart disease. And then when they're in the case of, let's say someone has a family history of heart failure. So in my family, we have a family history of cardiomyopathy, which just means heart muscle dysfunction. And that can be genetic. And so at that point, the primary care physician said, yeah, you probably should see a cardiologist and talk about your risk for heart failure. And the same goes for if your father or your mother or someone in your family had a heart attack or a stroke at a young age. There may be genetic risk factors that you need to be screened for and you have further risk modification. And so I think then your primary care physician can refer you to a cardiologist. So I think it starts just by knowing those numbers and then knowing your family risk as well.
Got it. I have two more questions for you, doctor. You mentioned before about improving heart muscle function. How's that done?
Yeah. So improving heart muscle function is a passion of mine. When my dad was first diagnosed, we really thought it was a death sentence, that heart muscle function always got worse. It never got better. But what we've learned over the last decade or so is that with the addition of these new therapies, the medical therapies for heart failure, we now can have someone who had a very weak heart. And that's where the heart muscle is really not pumping out much blood at all. That's called an ejection fraction, where that is very, very low. And patients are very symptomatic. We add 4 classes of these medicines that sort of block hormones that are worsening the syndrome. And over time, the heart muscle function can actually become more normal. And it's so rewarding and patients feel a ton better. Now they're still at risk for worsening heart failure over time and they need to see their physician, but it's really changed. It's like done a 180 from where heart failure was when my dad was first diagnosed 25 years ago.
And another question I have is, when you have some kind of heart disease, can you strengthen your muscle function with exercise? Should people be exercising? What's the regimen for that?
Great question. So exercise is never the wrong answer in general. Exercise itself can't really strengthen the heart muscle, but what it does do is it strengthens the peripheral muscle and your skeletal muscle, and it also helps the blood vessels relax. And so in a sense, it's not putting as much pressure on the heart when the heart pumps each beat, and that can help overall heart function like throughout your life course. But there's no exercise. If you have a weak heart, there's no exercise regimen that will improve that. That really has to be treated with medical therapy.
Got it. So you're talking about medicines that are doing that work for us. That's really incredible that we have that ability these days.
It's amazing. It's amazing. When I was training in, 20 years ago, we had negative trial after negative trial for heart failure. And it's really this renaissance period now where we have a lot more options for patients, and it's fun to treat them and have them improve their heart muscle function.
Great. So I'll ask you, doctor, what message you'd like to leave people with today. But before I do that, let me tell people where they can go to learn more, which is nm.org/heart. And NM is for Northwest Medicine. So it's nm.org/heart. So, doctor, what kind of words would you like to leave us with today so that we do keep our hearts healthy?
Well, Jonathan, I think that for me, it's always been about having a plan and having hope. So I think when you upfront know your numbers and you know your risk, you can prevent heart disease. But sometimes heart disease, there are genetic factors and other things that happen, and you develop heart disease and it can become very scary. And there's always hope. We have so many things to offer our patients, from transcatheter therapies, medical therapies, counseling, medications, so many things, even heart transplantation and heart pumps that can help people live as well as they can for as long as they can. So I think it's a great time right now in cardiovascular medicine, and I wish everyone a great Father's Day.
Good. Thank you so much. We've been talking with Dr. Jane Wilcox. She's the chief of the section of heart failure treatment and recovery. And I know she wants me to include that and recovery because you can recover, yes, from heart disease. She's also an associate professor of medicine at Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine. Thanks so much for being with us today, doctor. It's been great to have you and learn more.
Thanks so much, Jonathan. Pleasure to be with you.
Good. So this has been Jonathan Marks with Go to Health Media. We thank you for listening. We've reached 10,000 downloads per day. I'm really so happy that we are providing helpful information to you. Thanks for being with us. And remember, as we say at the end of every show, go to health. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning in today to Go to Health. You are one of almost 10,000 people per day who enjoy the evidence-based health information offered by our guest health experts. You can watch us on our website and YouTube and listen to us on 8 podcast networks. Be sure to join Jonathan Marks in our upcoming shows each week. If you like our show, please share this episode with your friends and colleagues. You can subscribe to the show, join our email list, send us feedback, browse through the online store, and view our library of over 150 shows at gotohealthmedia.com. See you next time, and remember to elevate your life with Go to Health.